Car Sales Talk 101, where it's all about life in the car business. Telling you like it is. Here's the man with the plan, Terry Cameron. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Car Sales Talk 101. I'm Terry Cameron. Thanks for hanging out with me again this week. Before we get started, I want to thank everybody that is sending out all this great information to me, asking me questions and giving me plenty of ideas for future podcasts. I promise I will get to each and every one of them. I will address them in future podcasts. Also, before I go any further, I would remind you, go to whatever platform you listen to this podcast on and give me a review. Write a review. Give me a rating. It really helps me when I see the words and I can see the reviews that I get. Of course, the more reviews I get, the better people think my podcast is, whether it's good or not. All right, so enough of that stuff. Let's get to what we're going to talk about today. And I really want to tell you guys that I get most of my information from what I see every day at my dealership. And my dealership is actually a very profitable dealership. We sell plenty of cars. We make lots of gross profit. But there's always some room for us to grow. And when I see mistakes that are happening on a regular basis, this is a really good time for me, a really good forum for me to address them. So this week, I want to talk about the art of taking a credit application or a customer statement or whatever you want to call it. I see too many times where we screw this completely up, and this can be used as a closing tool, also a rapport building tool if we do it right. So let's start at the very top. Number one, do not lie on the credit application. What just happened recently was we had a salesperson that made up the residence history. We all know that you need at least 2 years of residence history. You also need 2 years of employment history. Well, he made up the time that they were at the addresses they said they were at. Well, it didn't jive with what the bank saw on the credit report. What did that do? Well, it opened up a can of worms, and now we had to justify and verify and prove their proof of residence. We had to find that, and of course we couldn't because he made it up. Needless to say, we still got the deal done, but it put a lot of managers and finance managers to work trying to fix this mess. You got to be careful because you'll start losing trust with your banks, and if you're a salesperson doing this, you're going to start losing trust from your managers, and that's just going to cost you money in the long run. So we do not lie about any of that stuff. Let's start at the top. Number one, I want you to know this. You fill out the credit application, not your customer. We've gotten this far. Why do we want to put them in a confrontational and a stressful mode? We need to fill it out. Besides, who knows what we need more than you? I mean, customers don't know all the information we need. And if you throw an application out in front of them, it can be a little bit intimidating. They don't bring their references with them all the time. They don't know what bank cards they have and other loans. It's really a taunting task for them to fill it out. And I have seen people say, you know what? We're going to go home and get all this information because I don't have it all, and it can cost you a deal. We do not want them leaving the dealership. So, number one, their name. Put their proper name. If they're a junior and senior, and I don't mean did they graduate or if they're still in high school. I'm talking about a John Jones Jr. or John Jones Sr. If they're a senior or a junior, the second or third or fourth, put that on there. We don't want bad credit bleeding over into their good credit. We need to make sure we have that right. The other thing is, so we got lots of Bobs who are really Roberts. We got a bunch of Bills who are really Williams. We need to make sure that we know their full name. It's got to be correct. We want the bank getting a clear picture of who they are getting ready to approve or maybe turn down. So you make sure you fill out their proper name, and you need to ask them that. Too many times do I find the customer's name is completely wrong. They've used their nickname. You know, I have a salesperson working for me. His name is Harry, but he goes by Pete. So whenever anybody asks him his name, it's Pete. Make sure you get their real name, their proper name, the one that's on their driver's license, because I'm sure you all get a copy of that. Make sure their addresses are correct. Make sure if they haven't been in this address long enough, get their next address. Now, I deal with a lot of military people, so let me recommend this. If they've been overseas, if they've been deployed, use their home of record, where they grew up. Use that address because that's what they use a lot of times whenever they put their address out there for everybody to see. Okay, the next thing is their date of birth. Guys, if it's not correct, it's going to throw some red flags. And now you're going to have to prove by getting more stipulations to the bank. You have to prove when they were born, what their birthday is. Get their proper address. And when I say the proper address, I mean their apartment number, their complete and correct zip code. All that has to be in there. Remember, you need 2 years of residence history, and you also need 2 years of employment history. Let's go to the residence again. Make sure you fill out whether or not they rent, if they own, or if they have a mortgage, or whether they live in their family or maybe military housing. If you put the real number on there, it's going to be so much easier to prove that if the bank asks for it. So don't screw that up. They either own, they rent, they have a mortgage, or they live with their parents, or they're in military housing. Let's go to the next line. Email address, primary email address. That is getting to be more and more important than ever before. That's mainly how banks and how people communicate now is through email and, of course, text. So make sure you have a complete email address. On DealerTrack, you also see a number, a little message beside their phone number. They're going to ask for their cell number. And it says it's very important. So put their cell number. If it's the same as their house number, so put it in there. There's blanks on this form for a reason, to fill them out. Okay, so now we're at their employment. Make sure you get the full name of their employer. Make sure you get a complete address. You know, sometimes the banks can verify their employment just by using that phone number. It'll just quicken things a little bit more for you. And we all know how customers hate sitting around waiting for an approval. So make sure you get the address and their phone number. Their job title. Put it in there. If they're a foreman, write foreman. If they're a teacher, write teacher. If they're a nurse, now this is a tricky one. You want to know if they're a registered nurse, an LPN, whatever they are. Make sure you get that information in there. And if you're dealing with military, well, the banks don't care if they're an infantryman. What we need to put in there is their pay grade, an E4, an E5, an O6, whatever their pay grade is. That's what the banks want to know. We also need to know how long they've been there. Again, this is kind of tricky. Let's say they work for Walmart in one location for 4 years or are 6, and now they're at another Walmart and they've only been there for 6 months. Well, I think they've been working for Walmart for 4.5 years. So make sure you put their Walmart all in one 4.5 years. Now, if they're transfers, remember, just add all that job time up if they transferred, and that counts as one. If not, make sure you have 2 years of job time. It's way too important. And let me tell you, the longer the job time, and I'm not telling you to fudge this, but the longer the job time, the longer the residence history, the more stability do they have, and the banks they can actually give you a better rate. Maybe they'll bump them a tier, whatever it is. But so you got to make it look good. Every spot on that application is worth something that could actually get them approved. Now, last but not least, well, we're not even at the last, but gross monthly salary. I bet at least half of my customers tell me their net, what they get paid on their payday, not how much they got paid before they took taxes and benefits out. So make sure you get the gross amount. And the easiest way to do that is get a pay stub from them. Does some of this take a little bit longer? Of course it does. But it's better. It's to be safe than sorry. Let's get all that information. The employer's address, believe it or not, guys, it's really not that important. Just put the city and state. That's all you really need. And if you have a previous employer because they've been there shorter than 6 months, fill that out also. And it's real important to find out exactly what they did for that previous employer, because let's say they were a broker for an insurance company before, and that's what they are now. Well, that just shows a little bit more stability that they're working in the same field. Now, there's one thing that really, really is important on this credit application that we forget all the time, and that's the references. And I've said this on a previous episode. These references you need to tell your customer are local references that do not live in the same household. Because after you get that information, you can turn around and ask them, hey guys, do you mind if I call these people not to sell them a car, but just to introduce myself? So if they ever have any questions or need any help, they have somebody to call. Would that be okay? If you do it right, they're going to say yes. You just got some referrals right there. And that's very, very powerful. Last but not least, make sure they sign the application. Again, we're starting at the very beginning and we're going to finish. And the entire time that we are doing this from start to finish, you, the salesperson, the saleswoman, you are the one that is actually doing this. It's terrible to see you throw a piece of paper in front of somebody and walk away, go smoking and joking while they're sitting there sweating over this application. We have to get better at this. It builds rapport. And you know what? The more questions you ask them, the more times they're going to nod their head yes with those answers. And the more times they say yes, the greater your closing ratio is. It's just too hard for them to say yes, 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 yes. And then when we ask them to buy, they say no. So make sure you get all that stuff right. The application is a tool not only to get them approved, but help close your customer. Spend some time on it. Practice it. Role play it. It is such a great tool, and it's going to help you sell more cars and make more money. Just do it. Okay, guys, you know what I'm going to say now. It's because I truly believe it. The sky is the limit. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. Please rate it and write a review on Apple Podcast. We appreciate your valuable feedback. You can email Terry at 10minutesalestalk@hot.rr.com. And don't forget to share the show with a friend.